Hello everyone and welcome back to Brown Coat Reviews. I'm your host Laura. Now, the world of comics is as diverse as the people that read them. We all have those stories that we love, and we have those stories that we love to hate. But the best times are had when we don't let those differences come between us and instead celebrate those diversities. Now, today I am talking about one of the many female characters in the DC universe, and that is Harley Quinn. Now, most people have one of two extreme reactions to Harley Quinn. You either love her or you hate her. And that's okay. Like I said, that's the world of comics. I love reading her stories. She's a really, really fun character, and she's really funny. So for me, I've never had a problem with her. I've always enjoyed her in the animated Batman series. No problem. And I do actually like the movies that are coming out. And I know that's probably a very controversial statement for some of you, but I happen to like them. Now, these are actually two different versions of that origin story. So I wanted to go back to the beginning. Now, for fans of the Batman animated series, if you haven't watched it, check out It's Joker's Favor. It is the first episode and first introduction of the character of Harley Quinn. One of the things that I really respect about the Batman animated series is that they decided to take this one character, and they could have made her a simple side character. She could have been Joker's, Vanna White. Add a couple little witty remarks here and there, but she didn't have to have any substance. And the writers decided that that wasn't what they wanted. They wanted more from this character. This book, and I'm sure there are others that have the interview in it from Paul Dini, who was one of the writers, of course, for the Batman animated series, and he ended up writing Mad Love. For him, he talks about these relationships that I think all of us have had at one point in our lives, where you have such a blind, unconditional love for someone. You know it's not healthy, you know it's not the best choice for you, but you can't give it up. And that's some of what the basis that he uses for Harley Quinn. It obviously, because you're dealing with the writer and the artist from the Batman animated series, the artwork is very similar. So it fits seamlessly in that world and that timeline that they created. And then it does create this one little thread that I think is essential to Harley Quinn's character. And you actually will see it in the White Knight series, which is, yes, Harley Quinn is by the Joker's side. But if she stood in front of the Joker, or if she took on Batman alone, would she be more successful than the Joker has ever been? Is she more clever? Is she more capable? And I think that the possibilities of what that mind can do, because we know that there's a brilliance there. And I think that there's a lot of untapped potential that we don't always see, but I think we all know is under the surface. So I think that Paul Dini hit the nail on the head, where he understood that, yes, just because she goes from Harleen Quinzel to Harley Quinn, and it's not that she goes a little crazy, she just embraces this world of the Joker. That there's still a very calculating, very educated mind behind it. And yes, the Joker is brilliant in his own way, but he's also quite criminally insane. So if you lose that criminal insanity and you have that mind that can think and kind of process to that level, then I think that's where it gets really interesting. Is she really a threat to the Joker? And I think that that is the most important question. My own answer? Yes. And if you don't get both sides of that Harley Quinn character, then you're missing the whole point. And I think that Paul Dini created this character, started this character, and started that question back in the 1990s that I think we are all still asking ourselves today. And I think it's a brilliant start. So, why on earth would you take this origin story that is very beloved It is almost, I mean, it's not almost, it is canon. This is the story for Harley Quinn. So why would you try and redo this? And I think he did it to answer one of the deep-rooted questions that I had about Harley Quinn. Now, let me go back to Paul Dini for a second and explain why I had this question. Now, if you look into this artwork, and even if you just pay vague amounts of attention in the Batman animated series, whenever Harley Quinn and the Joker are in a scene together, it is a very dysfunctional relationship. The Joker yells at her an awful lot. He pushes, he pulls, he's the Joker. He's not nice to her at all, unless she's doing something that is benefiting him. And you constantly see her seeking that attention and desperate for his approval, and yet he very rarely ever gives it to her. And part of me always wondered, why? Why would she stay in this severely dysfunctional relationship? And why couldn't she stop, whether it was him or herself, resist that temptation, or at least identify it for what it was that he was using her? And he still is using her. And I could never understand that. So in walks Harleen. So I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name. I'm going to butcher it. So instead, we're just going to put it right here at the bottom. I know it's Stefan. And I want to say it's Sejic. I could be wrong. I'm sorry. But anyways, it is the same gentleman who does the art as well as the storyline of Harleen. So one of the first pages has this little dream sequence. Harleen is defending the Joker. She is protecting him from Batman, and you see this huge, monstrous bat. But you see how he is cowering, and he is shirtless, he is hidden, and he is defenseless, completely defenseless. And it's almost like she feels that her role as his therapist is to be that one person to stand up on his behalf when he can't be strong. And you can tell that just from these kind of first images. And then you see she's the one who saves him, but then she's also the one who kind of brings him, up out of that cowering position. And I love this image on this page. And it says, "My story is the one where the girl dances with the devil, and he takes her on a long road to hell. That road starts, as they often do, with a good intention." One of the other many things that I really liked about this version. So we've all seen the Joker, and we've seen the variety of the leaning more towards the clown side. We've seen the anarchist. We've seen the absolutely crazy. We've seen the version that I'm going to try not to bash on, but we have technically seen that version too. But there's not one version of them that I would look at and say, wow, that's a sexy man. And again, it's another reason why I'm like, as a woman, why would I be tempted to give up everything for this man? So one of the things that I really like about this artwork, which is what I'm trying to kind of highlight for you, is that they start showing some of the other sides of the Joker. So in this particular story, yes, the Joker does still have a white face and he does still have green hair, but you'll notice that his green hair is darker. It is less kind of fluorescent green. And his white face is a bit just very pale. The hair kind of falling in his face. You see these glimpses, little teeny tiny glimpses of him looking at her. And one of my favorite things about this story, we women, yes. When we're falling in love, it is definitely all about the little teeny tiny gestures, like the way he touched your hand, the way he caressed your cheek. I mean, just these little teeny tiny moments that we play over and over again in our heads. And there are little glimpses that you'll see in this story of glances that the Joker will make at Harley. And there are little glances that you'll see her make at him in return. And you can see those are those little, like, chick flick moments. Those are the times when you're just like, oh, there's a spark there. Oh, I can see that. Oh, I can see the allure. You can see how you could start, instead of just seeing a monster, you could see the man. And that's what I really like about this story. So this is one of those images. I love it. It is this beautiful little tender moment between the Joker and Harley. She finally agrees to let him call her Harley. It's a very romantic pose. I mean, there's something very vulnerable about, you kind of turn your back on someone that is as dangerous as the Joker is. But then there's also that moment where you feel completely safe and wrapped in someone's arms like that. It's a wonderful feeling. But there's something very nurturing, very safe, and very loving about this kind of embrace. And there's nothing in this about sex. There's nothing about he just wants her for her body. He's just using her. Instead, it's this beautiful little tender moment where she's crying and he thanks her for caring that much that she's in tears. And then he holds her. And you see that turn. And I'm like, that, when you start piecing all these little teeny tiny threads together, I'm like, okay, now I understand why she would fall in love with him. So in my own world, when I read this story and you watch that progression, and what I think is that this character who was manipulated, who fell in love, eventually does get to this point of being abused. Because the thing that we know about a cycle of abuse is that a cycle of abuse does not start immediately. Because if a woman went on a first date and she was hurt by a man and it was intentionally done, she would never see the man again. But most abuse situations are like a frog in boiling water. It's such a slow progression that by the time you sit there and go, oh, it's not just there's no excuse, there's no reason, it's this is wrong, this is bad, I should get out. Now you're trapped. And I think that's what happened to Harley Quinn. And that's where you get that huge gap between the Harley Quinn who is desperately seeking attention and seeking love and trying to get back to that original point where he puts her first. And you understand where she began. And you understand why she fell in love with this man who we all know is dark and twisted. And now she's given up everything. She can't go back to being a doctor. There is no Harleen Quinzel left. It's just Harley Quinn. And I think that there's a little part of Batman that always thinks that she could be reformed. But I think that there's a part of Harley Quinn that knows that it's too late. So what do? Instead, you stay with the abuser. And you wait and hope that maybe he will love you like that again. Now, that kind of story, again, you don't think that it exists in a world of comics. You don't sit here and talk about abusive situations, and you don't talk about love and manipulations. That's not something that most people assume happen in a comic book, but it does. So if you have never read a Harley Quinn story, I recommend both of these actually. I love both of them for their own merits. There's not one that I sit here and go, oh, well, it needs to get off the bookshelf. To me, these complete each other. Because if you understand where she started, then you understand how she ends. And yes, this does talk about where she started, but it doesn't have as much time to build it out, to explain that love story and why she's constantly seeking that approval that eventually you question and wonder, will she ever get it? And then you start seeing that progression of the character eventually to, we've got Birds of Prey, we have Suicide Squad, we have so much more that Harley Quinn does in the DC universe. But it helps to know where it all began. So, my big question for you, which one did you like better? Have you read both of these? If so, did you like one over the other? Was the artwork in one too distracting? Did you enjoy it? Or did you find that the Joker was too softened in Harleen and it wasn't as convincing to you as it was to me? Did you like it? Or is this one where you're just not a Harley Quinn fan and you probably never will be, and that's okay, because there are so many other characters in not just the DC universe, in the world of comics, that you can absolutely love. So which one do you prefer instead of Harley Quinn? Now please don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video, because we are going to have so many amazing conversations and discussions, and we're going to talk about comics. We're going to talk about comic book shops, different ways that you can get your comics, and we're certainly going to be talking about these stories and amazing collectibles. So please, share this, join the journey, join the discussion, join me on Instagram, everything's in the description box, and let's have a conversation about comic books. And why not start it with a character like Harley Quinn? Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. This is Laura from Brown Coat Reviews, and I can't wait to talk about comics with you again soon. Bye-bye.